It was a big week for offense, a lot of scoring, a lot of fantasy points, and hopefully a lot of happy listeners and viewers tonight on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sports book born in Vegas. The four of us are here. Sunday Night Football is starting. We are a little late today because the games went late, and we just saw the news that Josh Allen getting x-rays right now, so we're going to keep our fingers crossed there. Josh Allen was one of 5 quarterbacks, guys. This was the most all season. 5 quarterbacks who scored 35 or more fantasy points in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. Can you name them?
Yes. Yep. Because I'm looking right at the list.
Did Heath just glitch?
Yeah, Heath did glitch. Heath's in the Matrix right now.
I'm glitching on purpose.
Oh, okay.
I had some errors, but we're good.
Okay. Jamey, can you name them since you're not cheating?
I mean, I'm sort of cheating. Goff, Lamar, Allen, Mayfield, and Brock Purdy.
Rodgers! Bringing that back.
What in the world?
What?
I just got the worst text of my life.
Oh, no. What did it say?
Thumbs up for the year.
My mother-in-law just texted me and said, I sent 8 presents for Sarah in your name. Can you get them wrapped for us?
Oh, 8? That's
That's the worst text of your life? Man.
I don't wrap the presents I buy her.
I want to be you.
That's a pretty good text to be the worst one. All right, anyway.
I just sent you presents.
Can you wrap these presents for me? Oh, my life is a nightmare.
I'm going to send her the Randy gif from, what's the singing song? Where they judge the singers? American Idol.
No dog to your wife.
Randy saying it's a no for me, dog.
I thought she was going to text you. I started Jonathan Taylor and lost by 6. But anywho, let's get to the games. Here's a little segment. We don't have to analyze it. It's called Didn't See That Coming. Aaron Rodgers led the Jets in rushing with 45 yards. The 7th most rushing yards of his career, most rushing yards for Rodgers, who's one of the 5 who scored 35 points since 2019. Bo Nix led the Broncos in rushing with 23 yards. I guess we could have kind of seen that coming. Jaleel McLaughlin left with an injury. And who led the Houston Texans in receiving? Anyone know?
Joe Mixon.
Joe Mixon led the Texans in receiving with 33 yards. Unbelievable. So let's get to it. Dave, you look like you're in a jolly mood. Biggest winner from the week, I think. I mean, you can look at Jared Goff. You can look at almost anybody in that game between the Bills and the Lions, and you can feel good about them. Tons of points.
David Montgomery might disagree.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, he also got hurt. He missed a big chunk of the second quarter and a big chunk of the fourth quarter. And when they were trailing, it was a lot more of Gibbs. So he might not be 100%. And if Josh Allen is out, man, that would be tough. Oh, here's somebody who would disagree. Amari Cooper, but we can't call him the biggest loser. I think the biggest winner is probably any of the big Jets players, Rodgers, Adams, Garrett Wilson. Those guys really came out. Heath has a lot more to say about DeVonta Adams and the type of game that he had. But to me, those are the guys that put up big points. Fantasy managers that had faith in them, and it's easier to have faith in the receivers than it is in Rodgers. They're the ones who are happy with those winning performances.
Yeah, all right, Heath. He's wide receiver 1 right now with 42 fantasy points, 9 catches, 198 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did you want to add on to the DeVonta Adams?
Can you confirm, Dave? Did you confirm we were doing FFT Express just before this?
You were right. You were right.
DeVonta Adams had 2 targets and 0 catches in the first half of this game. This was one of the greatest halves in NFL history. And what Dave and I couldn't decide is it anything more than just LOL Jacksonville? Like they're just that bad
Well, they got the call at halftime. They said, you're winning the game. Stop.
Right.
You got to lose. One of the funniest things and benefits DeVonta Adams. I was, watching this because Heath has DeVonta Adams in the matchup where he's going to beat me. He had a touchdown overturned.
Yeah.
And then another touchdown right after it. You got an extra catch.
Did you hear that? Did you hear? Was it Rodgers or Adams? One of the two cursing at the official about. Do you want to overturn that one?
No,
I didn't. No. No, but look, great game for him, and that's 2 in a row. And I personally believe that the bye week did good for Aaron Rodgers. Remember, I had that stupid tweet. He's playing. He looks really good, and then he fell apart in that game against Seattle. But he's obviously moving a lot better than he was before. I don't know if that's the reason why these guys are having better games, but he's moving better than he was before.
Well, this is we said the schedule was going to be very beneficial for them. and it seems like it's falling into place. So, this is an interesting game coming up against a Rams team that obviously looked very good defensively. They are at home. Rams have to go across the country, but they are going to be rested. So we'll see how that unfolds. But it's good to if you started Rodgers in the podcast league. I don't remember who exactly we're playing the team name. I apologize, but they picked up Rodgers this morning and started them against us, and that was just a rough sweat. We might pull it out. It depends on Sincere McCormick, but watching Rodgers go against you was not fun.
Yeah.
I started Rodgers over Mahomes after the weather adjustments this morning, but chickened out on Rodgers over Tua, which I should have done.
All right, let's go to our biggest loser here. I'm going to throw it to Jamey. Jamey, who's our biggest loser this week?
I mean, you could just go with the name that Heath just said, Tua Tagovailoa. For a guy that's been on fire right now. He had some of the worst passes I've ever seen him throw in college, pro, anything. He had one that should have been picked over the middle of the field. He had another that was just an awful throw that was intended for Tua that was picked. The two Tyreek that was picked. The one on the sideline was the second Stingley interception. Tyreek had the ball in his hands. It was ripped out of it, but not a great throw. He was just awful, absolutely abysmal. And, just not the right time, clearly, for a lot of people who are counting on him. And obviously for any Dolphins fans that were hoping the Dolphins can maybe make a run. So their season's over. And Tua falls in line with Matthew Stafford and Brock Purdy this week.
And if for those of you wondering, because I was wondering myself, how much did Derrick Stingley shadow Tyreek Hill? The first line of the AP recap of this game, tasked with shadowing Miami star receiver Tyreek Hill for most of Sunday's game, Houston cornerback Derrick Stingley shined. So I think that probably had a lot to do with Tyreek Hill's absolutely abysmal game, 2 catches for 36 yards on 7 targets. All right, so that was some AFC East analysis. Jets offense, big winners. Tua Tagovailoa, big loser. And you're a big winner because you got an opportunity to buy some awesome stuff for the holidays right now. If you go to shop.cbssports.com/fantasy, shop.cbssports.com/fantasy, perfect time to crown your fantasy football champion, whether you're celebrating a championship or teasing the league's biggest loser. Fantasy Football Today's new fan shop, powered by ShopSense, has everything you need, from trophies to t-shirts. We've got the gear to make your league unforgettable. Also, if you want to just upgrade your fan cave or buy a gift for someone, there's some really cool stuff. Again, go to shop.cbssports.com/fantasy, or you can scan the QR code, and I'll try to put a link in the episode description.
Is that a tray?
That looks like a tray. Yeah, the red.
You can buy a tray.
Well, it looks like it's for dips.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Cool for tailgating. Good stuff on here. All right. Anyway, check it out. News and notes. So quarterback news. I think Josh Allen's fine. Calling it precautionary. It just came in. Kyler Murray left. He came back. But the big one is Patrick Mahomes. He is week to week with a high ankle sprain, what they believe is a high ankle sprain as we sit here on Sunday night. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. They play Thursday and then Wednesday, right?
Saturday.
Oh, they play Saturday and then Wednesday. Okay. So he might miss the next 2 games. We'll see. I forget, one of you had Dave, you had the Chiefs offense as one of your big losers, right?
This is part of the reason why is because of Mahomes with the injury. But the offense it was okay early on in the game, but I think a lot of it had to do with Cleveland putting them in good field position, but still they executed. And then in the second half, they really weren't doing very well. And then Mahomes got hurt. And so now 2 more games in the next 10 days. That's a lot to ask for anybody. But now without Patrick Mahomes, that's just going to be a tough go. Carson Wentz, Heath talked about this on FFT Express, really a good backup fantasy quarterback, but he's a backup NFL quarterback for a reason. I wouldn't feel good trusting any Chiefs players with Wentz. That's an obvious statement. It goes double for Pacheco, who basically had the same amount of carries, maybe even the same amount of touches as Kareem Hunt. And there was a 3-way split amongst the running backs with Pacheco, Hunt, and Samaje Perine. It's messy, and I don't want to trust it if I don't have to.
All right, more news. We had a lot of quarterbacks either get hurt or get replaced. Spencer Rattler replaced Jake Haener. Dorian Thompson. What?
He looked good.
Well. Yeah, but he looked horrible when he was the starter earlier this year, so I don't think we'll get too excited. Dorian Thompson-Robinson replaced Jameis Winston. I mean, this guy, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, is just not who you want to see at quarterback if you have Jerry Jeudy. Tim Boyle replaced Tommy DeVito, who left with an injury. I don't know if it was confirmed, but it was a concussion.
And did well.
He did do well.
Yeah, looked really nice.
Another guy who has not been good in the past. Alvin Kamara left with a groin injury. Kendra Miller could be very popular next week at Green Bay. Nick Chubb broke his foot. Jerome Ford will certainly be popular at Cincinnati next week. Jaleel McLaughlin left with a quad injury. Joe Mixon left but came back. Saquon Barkley briefly left. Tony Pollard left. He was kind of in and out, but he got a ton of carries, and he had a decent game. Solid game. Rico Dowdle became the first undrafted free agent to rush for 100 yards in 3 straight games since Arian Foster. Very cool. And Braylon Allen left for the Jets. A.J. Brown got hurt really late. This feels like one where he's going to miss some practice. I hope he's okay. But he got rolled up on late in that game.
Didn't look good. Looked like one of those, they said not a hip drop tackle, but it was one that you might confuse for a hip drop tackle.
Yeah, totally. Let's see, what else do we have? Alec Pierce left with a concussion. Xavier Leggett left with a groin injury. And Malik Nabers, he's just playing through stuff. And then he got stepped on today, but he's toughs it out, and he had a huge game. Tight end news, Zach Ertz left in the second quarter with a concussion, and Travis Kelce hurt his ankle, but he stayed in the game. And I wonder if Wentz is out. I mean, Wentz is in and Mahomes is out. Are we considering Kelce an automatic start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Start Jake Ferguson over him?
It's like Brenton Strange.
You can lower expectations.
Yeah. I mean, if Travis Kelce's own performance over the last 6 weeks hasn't lowered expectations,
right?
Like, he's a starter, but he's not anything special.
Well, we have a lot of defensive injuries, but I'm going to save them, and let's get into the more fun stuff. I got 2 segments. One's called, Are We Benching Him? And the second one is called, Of Course He Did This When I Benched Him. So let's start with, Are We Benching Him? Kyler Murray at Carolina next week. He scored 9.1 fantasy points against the Patriots and has rushed for 21 or fewer yards in 6 of his last 7 games. Dave, are we benching him, Kyler Murray?
I don't feel comfortable starting him, even though it's Carolina, even though it's a matchup that should be great. They're probably, I don't know if there's going to be 12 quarterbacks that I will for sure say, yes, definitely start over Kyler Murray. But for now, the knee-jerk reaction is to say that he's not a top 12 guy.
Yeah, I think people are going to be pretty pissed off. Sorry for
as somebody who is most likely going to advance in one league with Kyler, I'm starting him next week.
Who are your other options?
None.
That's why you're starting.
Yeah,
very bold.
I was going to say, it wasn't like he didn't have any touchdowns. He averaged 7.5 yards per attempt. He played good football today.
And he had one that was knocked out. That should have been one, or had the chance to get one with the.
I think there were 2 of those.
And Christian Gonzalez knocked away at least 2 from Marvin Harrison in the end zone.
That's what.
Yeah. Threw it Trey McBride in the end zone instead.
They tried. Did you see they tried? They gave him a shovel pass at the 1. And McBride couldn't get in.
But he still scored 17 fantasy points with no touchdown.
That's amazing.
He's incredible.
All right, Heath, I'll give you the next one here because for the people, and I think 3 of the 4 of us on this show called Derrick Henry a bust in PPR. This is what it looks like if he had actually been a bust. But he was so good for the first 9 games. But over the last 7 games now, he scored fewer than 15 PPR fantasy points in 6 of his last 7 games. So Derrick Henry, with his worst game of this stretch, 6.7 fantasy points at the Giants. Are we benching him against Pittsburgh next week?
Yeah. Do you want me to say yes so everybody who survived with Derrick Henry can start him and feel good? Because
whatever you want.
No, I don't think anybody's benching Derrick Henry.
Okay. All right. It's frustrating though, but a lot of games he's done well. He just hasn't really had the fantasy production. But
he had all the touchdowns early, and there's already been a couple of jokes in the chat about Adam still thinks Lamar Jackson is the MVP. Lamar Jackson threw 5 touchdown passes and had 355 yards from scrimmage today. Like he had all the touchdowns today.
And I was watching the game in our Stanford office with some football dudes, and I forget who said it, but they said apparently all 3 of Lamar Jackson's interceptions this year have gone off the hands of Ravens receivers.
Yeah,
isn't that amazing?
He's incredible.
But you want to debate the MVP all you want. We should at least acknowledge we have a hell of a race. All right, so people are going to start Derrick Henry, but it is getting frustrated. If you're looking for some comfort, since week 10 over his last 5 games, including today, he is on a 17-game pace of well over 1,500 total yards. We're just missing the touchdown.
Do we, and this is going to sound so silly.
Okay, good.
But this is now back-to-back weeks of the Giants shutting down Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry, and then they get Bijan next week.
Yeah, but Jamey, think about last week. My stat of the game for Giants Saints was these are the 2 worst run defenses in football. They give up the most yards per carry to running backs. So 2 weeks in a row, the Giants' run defense has been good without Dexter Lawrence and Bobby Okereke. And 2 weeks in a row, the Saints, they did it to Tracy, even though he had a good game, and then they did it to Robinson. So it's just weird. It's just weird.
Justice Hill had almost 3 times as many PPR points as Derrick Henry.
All right, Dave, are we benching Joe Mixon next week? Because he faced a good run defense this week, and he stunk, and he faces an even better one next week in Kansas City.
I get nervous. About Joe Mixon, and we've seen him against tough run defenses this season and more recently, and he's been terrible. The offensive line for Houston's terrible. I don't think opponents are fearing CJ Stroud like they might have been at the beginning of the year, so they can focus a little bit more on Joe Mixon. Imagine if you've got Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon. You woke up today thinking that you were going to just waltz right into round 2 of your
I don't have to imagine that, Dave. I do in YOLO.
You've got them both? That sucks. Are you out? Are you cooked?
No, he's going to win.
It's a coin flip. Jamey's mushing continues.
Jamey's been doing this since Friday morning. All weekend, man.
And what happened between us?
I had a huge week. I don't think Brock Purdy, whoever would have saved you. I was Jennings.
I think we could be on the verge. I think we could be on the verge of a really terrible game between the Texans and the Chiefs next week.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break, and we're going to get to, of course he did this when I bench him, after this on Fantasy Football Today.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have a... Wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance, but you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount+. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
Welcome back, everybody. Of course he did this when I bench him. I looked at 2 receivers whose start percentage was below 70%. And look, our start percentage is a little bit unreliable right now because people are out of it. But Malik Nabers started in 66% of leagues. He's caught his first touchdown since when? Week 3 or something? Yeah.
I'll double check.
10 catches, 82 yards, and a touchdown on 14 targets. A garbage time touchdown for him. 66% started. And DeVonta Smith. Well, we got more pass attempts from Jalen Hurts, and it looked good. And DeVonta Smith.
Turns out he can throw a forward pass.
Yeah, he played great. Some of these quarterbacks played great today.
Yeah.
But Malik Nabers and DeVonta Smith, did their performances this week, Jamey, I'll throw to you first. Did their performances this week make you more confident in them next week? Nabers is at Atlanta and DeVonta's at Washington.
I mean, you couldn't ask for a better matchup for Nabers, so as long as he's healthy, you're starting him. And then in terms of DeVonta Smith, I mean, my God, the setup is there if there's no A.J. Brown. We saw it earlier this season how great he was. So if Brown's going to miss, then DeVonta Smith is a league winner. So
what if he's
definitely starting DeVonta Smith, even if A.J. Brown plays, just coming off the game that he had. And again, no Goddard, so that factors in too. But there's a path here for top 10 DeVonta Smith.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Look at the MC3 in our chat. Bench Nabers and Davante Adams, but still should win. I have a question for you guys. How do you feel when a player on one of your teams that's on a bye is having a big week? I kind of hate it.
When you're on a bye?
Yeah, like your team's on a bye and your team's like your bye team is going off.
Right.
I hate that. It's like, come on, don't do it this week. All right, time for some winners and losers here. Dave, Jerome Ford and Brenton Strange could be 2 hot waiver wire pickups. Ford is 48% rostered and Strange is 5% rostered. But what are your expectations for Jerome Ford now that we've got Cincinnati next week and Miami in week 17 and Nick Chubb has a broken foot.
Right. So first and foremost, it sucks that Nick Chubb looks like his season's over and who knows what the future holds for him. He's been through so much. Jerome Ford just has this great opportunity. The Browns playing out the string at this point. He'll be their lead running back. There's always a chance that he lets us down, but it is Cincinnati and their run defense has been terrible for much of this season. We saw after Chubb went down this week, it was over 80% of the snaps for Jerome Ford. the rest of the game. So I would imagine he could be a 3-down player, could catch a lot of short throws from Dorian Thompson Robinson, and he could end up being a decent RB2 for fantasy.
Not ahead of. I'm sorry if you said this. I don't think I missed it. You wouldn't consider starting him over Joe Mixon, would you?
I don't think I've got the chutzpah to do something like that.
I will just say, like, he hit the big play in this game, which is something he's done quite a bit over the last 2 years. They've also gotten really frustrated with him from time to time for trying to hit the big play too often.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he's like a safe start.
Oh, no chance. But how many running backs are we going to be able to look at next week and say, okay, should be in the neighborhood of 10 carries, 3 catches, maybe a little bit more than that, and does have big play potential? He'll be in the top 24. He'll be, and with a good matchup, yeah, dude, he's going to be a top 24 running back for us.
We'll have this conversation on Tuesday, but do you think you'd pick up Brenton Strange or Stone Smart?
Strange. 12 targets, 11 catches. The yardage is terrible on 11 catches, but in a PPR league, you're not going to care that much. This is the number 2 target in Jacksonville, with the number 1 being Brian Thomas Jr. Good short area option for Mac Jones to check down to. I don't see many games where Jacksonville is going to be playing with a big lead. They might be in some competitive games like they were this past Sunday. And so Brenton Strange is going to be someone that I would count on as we can call him a streamer at tight end. But if you're frustrated with the Jake Fergusons of the world, the Cade Ottons of the world, this is one of your pivots, Brenton Strange. And Evan Ingram isn't coming back. He's done for the year.
As well against the Jets too, which had been, very good against tight ends.
Yeah, right.
For defense. It feels like it could be. I mean, I totally agree with Dave, but it feels like it could be fool's gold just because we haven't seen Ingram really do this with Mac Jones. So you just wonder if this was a rare situation. Like, can he do it again? We'll see.
Plays Las Vegas in week 16, Tennessee at home in week 17.
46 pass attempts though for Mac Jones. We're always kind of on alert for that. But look, I picked up Strange this morning in a league where I had Evan Ingram. I figured he could give me about 9 points. So pleasant surprise for him to have a huge game. Heath, your winners, Davante Adams, who we talked about, and Mike Evans, who had 9 catches, 159 yards, 2 touchdowns on 11 targets.
He is now 83.67 yards per game that he needs to reach 1,000 for the 11th or 12th or however many years in a row.
I mean, it's done. It's going to happen.
He was awesome in this game, made a couple great double moves, got open deep. Looks like a league-winning must-start wide receiver.
Their schedule the rest of the way. Dallas without Trayvon Diggs the rest of the way. Carolina in week 17. Hell yeah. New Orleans in week 18. It's happening as long as he stays healthy.
I don't know about I know Lattimore's not there anymore, but man, does he have bad history against New Orleans? But that's mostly a Lattimore thing. Okay, winners for Jamey are James Cook. Talked about it on the show on Thursday or Friday, whenever that was. He has not had 2 bad games in a row all season. And I guess you could say Cook gets his points in sometimes unconventional ways, but he got them in bunches today. So James Cook with 105 rushing, 28 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, and then T. Higgins, 5 for 88 and a touchdown at Tennessee. All right, go ahead, Jamey. James Cook and T. Higgins.
I mean, look, these are guys we had questions about, right? So they came through in, big spots and performed, exceptionally. And so, for Cook, it's still a little frustrating because you're seeing a 3-man rotation between Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. And Johnson was great early in the passing game. Davis caught a touchdown as well. So you're probably still going to get a few too many touches for other guys. But with the way this Buffalo offense is playing, you just have to take your chances and just start him in week 16 and week 17 if they continue to advance. And then in the case of T. Higgins, you said the same thing also. He doesn't have back-to-back bad games very often either. And so this was just good to see that he could bounce back in a big way. And they get the Browns in that terrible secondary right now going into week 16. So good opportunity for T. Higgins to have back-to-back big weeks as well.
All right, let's go to our losers.
And by the way, if you want to see the Bengals in the playoffs, you're rooting very hard for the Broncos to lose 2 of their next 3 games, including you're rooting hard for them to lose 3 games in a row, but 2 of them are not the Bengals. They do play the Bengals in week 17. So Broncos lose out, Bengals win out, they can get in the playoffs.
I mean, I'm kind of digging the Broncos. But I definitely.
Who wants to see the Bengals in the playoffs? That sounds awful.
As a Chiefs fan, I'm sure. I do think you'd rather see, at this point, you'd rather see the Chargers out But the Chargers have a much easier schedule. They get the Broncos this week, which is probably a game that they could lose. And then they get the Raiders and I forget who else.
All right, let's go to the losers. Jamey, Anthony Richardson hurt his team's playoff chances today with, he starts out with that touchdown run and a great way to start, and everything just
I thought he was off to a big game. I liked him this week, and I thought it was going to be an opportunity for him to play well. And, clearly there was going to be some missed throws. That was the case. He had a couple drops again from his receivers, which was, unfortunate. But really things just fell apart for them once the Jonathan Taylor fall. I don't understand what run into the end zone. Just run into the end zone. Why?
Let's not laugh about that.
No, it hurt me too. It sucks. Just absolutely sucks.
Millions of people lost their fantasy football leagues.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Very frustrating. So
millions.
Millions might have.
Millions of people.
I would be surprised if billions did, but okay.
I feel like agents should have a take like it should just count as a touchdown.
I had somebody text me this morning, Jonathan Taylor or James Cook, and I was like, I like them both about the same, number 2 running backs. I think Taylor, this is a week for Taylor to go off. I think it's an opportunity for him to play well. And the text I got back was any coach who he plays for should choke him.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but no, you're right, Heath. It should count as a touchdown. I mean, honestly, the Broncos didn't do anything to stop him. It was a self-inflicted boot.
It's obvious. Yeah.
Your other loser is Jameson Williams, who did catch.
Yeah, I sent it to you before the touchdown. So.
No, but still, I mean, for Jared
Goff,
Goff,
the big one.
Jared Goff scores over 50 points and makes probably the best throw of his life that Jameson couldn't hold on to. But Williams so uninvolved. It does make you he had a nice. Dave, you even said he has a nice floor, and he hit it today because of that touchdown. But for Goff to have this kind of game over 400 yards, and for Williams to have 3 for 37 and a late touchdown on 5 targets, I think it's fair to call him a loser.
Yeah, no, he scored touchdowns. He's not a loser. I'll change it to Saquon. Between Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, a lot of people were not happy today.
Let's see Saquon and Hurts have a good game at the same time. It's not it hasn't happened in a while.
That's fair.
Well,
6 weeks.
I mean, I think it's probably happened pretty regularly since it's the number 4 quarterback and number 1 running back in fantasy.
I think it's been 5 weeks in a row where one of them has disappointed. Either Hurts scored under 20 or Barkley has scored under 15. They haven't both.
So when's the last time Laporta and Jameson Williams both had a good game together? Does this qualify?
Yeah.
Laporta had a huge second half. Not quite Davante Adams-esque, but 7 for 111 for the game. He had 1 22-yard catch in the first half. Completely came alive as a short area guy. I wonder if that hurt Jameson, although Jameson did have the touchdown late.
All right. And Heath's losers are Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jake Ferguson.
We talked about this on Express, but Jake Ferguson was a gift on the waiver wire if you were hurting at tight end. Just because of injury, he's available in half of leagues, and he gets the Panthers and the Buccaneers in the first 2 weeks of the playoffs. And we had people say this throughout the week. I'll give them credit. He's just been awful with Cooper Rush, and that continued, even in a game when Cooper Rush scores 24 fantasy points. And so now you've got Jake Ferguson going into a great matchup against Tampa Bay next week, and I don't feel any confidence at all I can start him. Yeah. Speaking of not feeling any confidence at all, Marvin Harrison Jr., the only thing we had, actually, we had something before this. We had if he just gets 6 targets, he's good. And then he messed that up. And then we had every other week he scores a touchdown and has 100 yards. And now he's messed that up. He's just the most dart throw flex there is. What a disappointment of a rookie season.
But I really I know you're not going to want to hear this, but I got to give Christian Gonzalez some credit here because he knocked away 2 balls in the end zone from Harrison. And I
tell you what, he gets a lot of opportunities. I think I saw last week he is the 2nd or 3rd most targeted cornerback in football this year.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And what are his numbers?
I didn't see that part.
I might have it.
But I will say the problem with Marvin Harrison this season is that he gives corners a lot of opportunities to knock balls out of his hands because every time he catches a pass, the corner is standing right next to him.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about that with Dave. We just kind of chatted about it. I don't know, man. He doesn't look like this elite. But I don't want to say it out loud because he does things differently. He's not Nabers. He's a different kind of wide receiver.
He's not Brian Thomas.
Not even close. But we knew that going into the year. I think what's shocking us is that Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't being used anywhere close to how he was used at Ohio State. The deep A dot is something that just baffles me. That's not who he is. Okay, in college, it's one thing to win downfield if you're just an exceptional player, but he was definitely not on the same level as far as explosiveness and speed as Nabers or Brian Thomas Jr. or other receivers in the class. It's the short area route running and the fact that the Cardinals don't have him doing a lot more of those horizontal routes or double moves, stuff like that. It's mind-boggling. I've got your Gonzalez stat if you want it.
Yeah.
He's number 4 in targets. This is after 14 games for the New England, but he's the only one in the top 5 with a catch rate allowed of under 63%. It's a 55.7% catch rate allowed. He's allowed 2 touchdowns on the year. We absolutely should have given him even more credit. We will not make that mistake moving forward. The next game he's got is at Buffalo.
So the 2 touchdowns is great. I will say, like, a guy who is getting targeted the 4th most in the NFL and giving up a 55% catch rate, like, he's going to give up a lot of PPR points.
It's 44 catches for 461 yards. It's pretty low yards per catch rate. His yak is really low. Only 138 of those yards came after the catch. And that's on an 8 out of 12 yards. So he does get challenged downfield. If you want to line him up against the other corners, I don't think anybody really cares about this, but
No, I think
Millen, Alante Taylor, Byron Murphy Jr., they get targeted a ton. They've each allowed a catch rate north of 70%. And on a lower A dot too.
All right. No, look, he's good. I don't know if he's amazing yet, but he could become one, certainly. And I think if I recall, he's like crushing every other cornerback in that class. That's like Deontay Banks, Emmanuel Forbes, Joey Porter. Gonzalez, I think, was the first one drafted, but he is crushing that class. All right. Dave's losers, the Kansas City offense, who we talked about, and Calvin Ridley. But if they go to Mason Rudolph, would you feel better about him?
No, I don't. I'm done with the Titans passing game, and I'm nervous about the Titans running game. And they've got Indianapolis next week. Okay, well, they just had Cincinnati this week. And Will Levis was a total mess. Rudolph was a little bit better, but still Ridley had a terrible game. We saw Chico Conquo come alive. He had 10 targets, 8 catches. Tyjae Spears, you want to talk about weirdos who led their team in receiving yards. Spears had 6 catches for 87 yards. I wonder if they make a move to let Spears handle more of the work moving forward. And even if they don't actually make that move, when they fall behind in their games down the stretch, it's going to be Spears on the field.
I just wanted to add one thing. I've talked about this when we've done game previews, but Marvin Harrison Jr. now has 11 catches of 0 to 5 air yards. The only wide receivers, the only must-start wide receivers that have fewer than that, I think it's one guy, and it's A.J. Brown, and he has 10, and he missed 3 or 4 games. So it's to talk about the way they're using him. They don't give him anything easy, Marvin Harrison. It's very frustrating to see. All right, that's our winners and our losers. That's it. All right, great. Let's go to our goal line work. I'm not really tracking goal line work anymore. I think Tyrone Tracy could have had a touchdown, but Devin Singletary got it instead. That was really frustrating. I'm not sure if anybody saw this, but I think Brian Dable got pretty pissed at, sorry, I shouldn't have said that, pretty angry with Tracy for dropping a pass. Someone said he kind of benched him briefly. But
it must have been very briefly. He dominated snaps for the Giants.
But I think it might have been just before the Singletary touchdown. Yeah, go ahead.
Are we 100% sure the Worthy touchdown was a rush?
Yeah, they showed it on the broadcast that at best it was parallel to the line of scrimmage, and maybe a little
very,
bit
very, very close.
It was
away
very
from Mahomes.
What?
Yeah,
They took it away from Mahomes.
Yeah, because Mahomes had a pretty crummy fantasy game, and I thought he threw 3 touchdowns, but only threw 2.
Right. No, they only counted it as 2. They've got the Worthy one as a rush, but it was very borderline. So I'll be sending some strongly worded emails to Elias in the next couple of days.
I would say honestly, if Mahomes was part of your fantasy matchup, or Josh Allen with that Khalil Shakir, I mean, do you think that was definitely a pass?
Yes, the Shakir touchdown was definitely a pass. That's a forward pass.
Yeah,
the quarterback, quote unquote, threw to where it's a pop pass.
Yeah, but it was very close. But just don't celebrate yet, I guess. All right, we'll get into the games in just a moment here. One thing to think about, though, I'm not going to get it. We can't get off this tangent, but I really thought today when we talk about losers, we think about the futures. We're coming up on the NFL draft soon for a lot of these teams. For Will Levis, for Anthony Richardson. I may be forgetting someone, but some of these quarterbacks, those two in particular, like
Tim Boyle.
Their teams really gave them a lot to think about today. Like
Bryce Young.
That was the other one. Yep.
There just aren't enough, I don't think, and maybe they'll the NFL has a way of finding 4 or 5 guys by the time we get to April. But I think this year there aren't enough guys, and especially those teams aren't low enough draft picks to where they probably I think Richardson's getting another year. Yeah. Levis probably is.
All right, let's.
I don't know what Levis is.
I'm not sure about Tim Boyle.
Well, there's going to be obviously one of these, Sam Darnold types that sign somewhere to one of these teams. Like I can see the Titans doing something like that.
Or Aaron Rodgers.
Let's take a little break here. And when we come back, we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Jets and the Jaguars and more games when we come back on FFT.
Mr. Richard?
Yeah, Doc.
Unfortunately, Mr. Nibbles crossed the Rainbow Bridge moments ago.
He was the best hamster I have ever known.
I know this is a difficult time for you, but would you happen to know of any deep stash dynasty tight ends I could zero in on for my draft tonight?
Jatavion Sanders.
Thank you. I'm sorry for your loss.
I promise you this happened. I passed by. We filmed that at an actual animal hospital, and I passed by it, and I thought to myself, I miss Mr. Nibbles.
For you listeners who don't know what we're talking about, it's a promo that Dave and Chris Hassel shot, and it is absolutely hilarious. All right, Jets 32, Jaguars 25. We talked about Rodgers. Let's talk about Breece Hall. How much confidence do you have in Breece Hall, Jamey? Started in only 39% of leagues, got the late touchdown to save his bacon, but he only had 51 total yards and 11 touches.
I feel a little bit more confident if he practices this week, but not to say he's a top 15 running back right now. I mean, we'll see how everything shakes out with injuries and whatnot, but that was a little tough to watch, especially when we had some opportunities there inside and certainly in the red zone where Isaiah Davis was on the field. I know it was some third down situations, but I mean, they're not throwing him passes at all. If he doesn't score, clearly the rushing numbers are terrible. And, for what it's worth, the Rams run defense looked fantastic against 49ers last time we saw them. So it's not a slam dunk that Breece Hall is a must start running back. I have a team that I was, on a bye and with Breece Hall, and I'm going to have a tough call to make between Jonathan Taylor and Breece Hall as my second running back. Well, depending on what happens to Ken Walker. If he's back, then Charbonnet. If he's not back, Charbonnet will be in my lineup. But in any event, Hall is in that canoe of questionable starts. Like for example, when I wouldn't be surprised if I ranked Jerome Ford ahead of Breece Hall.
I think we could set a range for Travis Etienne, something like 11 to 13 fantasy points, and he's probably going to set a record for most games finishing. I mean, he is just like when he plays a normal snap share, he's always scoring about that. But it was, I think, if you were hoping Tank Bigsby could follow up on his performance, It was disappointing that Etienne outcarried him.
It was more than that. He played 70% of the snaps, dominated third downs, 3 or 4 snaps inside the 5. It's Etienne's show again. And that's good to see. Another note on Breece Hall that I just want to point out. Braylon Allen missed most of the second quarter and most of the third quarter. And still, Breece Hall had 49% of the snaps. A lot of Isaiah Davis, including on third downs. And each of those running backs, Breece Hall, Davis, Braylon Allen, 1 snap inside the 5. So there isn't really that dominant workhorse role for Breece Hall anymore.
All right, let's go to the Chiefs and the Browns. Kansas City with a 21-7 win on the road. Heath, any thoughts on this game? How about the Browns passing games? Dave's brought talked about being low on the Chiefs offense, and it was a disappointing day for Pacheco for sure. But the Browns passing offense, good day for Judy. That was it. No Njoku, no Tillman, and now we don't even know who the quarterback's going to be.
Well, we talked about this a lot on the show this morning. With the weather reports and the tumbling over under. It started at 46 on the week. It was down to 41 by the time we were doing the show live this morning. So I didn't want to make too much of the Browns pass game struggles. Elijah Moore is obviously Just broke the Marvin Harrison Jr. trend, the every other game trend. So that's disappointing. But he could still score 16 or more fantasy points in any given game, and 4 or fewer in any given game. As long as Jameis is okay and starting next week, I think we're probably going to still start most of these guys against the Bengals.
And Kevin Stefanski was asked about it, but he would not commit to Jameis Winston. Things will change if it's Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Man, how quickly it's unraveled for him. My gosh, like from the Ravens game to the Steelers game, and just how he's sort of captured the Browns, hearts essentially.
Yeah.
And now he looks so bad today.
Yeah. I don't think they can trust him anymore.
All right, Cincinnati 37, Tennessee 27. And man, the Bengals, you know what to do with your Bengals. All right, so anybody have any more optimism than Dave did for the Titans offense?
I mean, I agree with you, Adam. I think Mason Rudolph's better fit at this point. Will Levis just continues to turn the ball over. And we saw Rudolph in those 2 games. If you're talking about a streamer for Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues, I don't know what he finished with today, but in 2 of those 3 games, he was over 20 fantasy points. So
19 today.
Yeah, and that's in just about a half. So we're looking at a guy that just seems to be a better fit for what Callahan's offense needs right now. And I don't know. I mean, it doesn't mean you're starting Calvin really with any confidence. Obviously, Nick Westbrook-Akina, that experiment's done. To Dave's point, Chigo Conco, somewhat streamable. Again, we're talking about the semifinals in the fantasy league, so I don't think a lot of people need to pivot to necessarily somebody at that level. Hopefully not. But I think Rudolph's a better fit for the offense. So starting these guys, I don't think anybody's starting anybody aside from maybe Tony Pollard if he gets in some practice time, or if he's out, then maybe Tyjae Spears. But really, he'll still be a number 3 receiver. It's just I think by nature of what the position looks like right now, he's still going to get those target opportunities in a situation where hopefully he could take advantage of the Colts defense.
Dallas 30, Carolina 14. And who are you gonna feel more confident in next week? Rico Dowdle against the Bucks or Chuba Hubbard against the Cardinals?
Rico.
Probably Chuba.
Yeah, I might go back to Chuba.
Okay. Man, Rico Dowdle is a pretty interesting player looking ahead to next season. Yeah. He's having a great year. Really is. Again, I think we're at the point where I'm not going to sit here and talk for a while about CeeDee Lamb. Just start CeeDee Lamb at this point. Gets a ton of targets. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Adam Thielen is the story here. Definitely guilty of recommending him. And he was okay. 10.1 PPR fantasy points. But I will bring this up. The last 2 teams he played, Tampa Bay and Philadelphia, they have struggled against slot receivers. The Cowboys give up the 4th fewest yards coming into the game to slot receivers. Truthfully, Jalen Coker is also a slot receiver. I don't know where his big play came from. But what are we thinking about Thielen right now after this relative dud and getting the Cardinals next week?
He's a number 3 wide receiver. Number 3 wide receivers have games like this.
Still had 7 targets. ADOT wasn't too bad. It was 8.9 yards. Did line up in the slot 71% of the time. So maybe there's a little bit of something to that, but still a target share of 26%. Hard to get away from receivers that have that type of volume.
It was a step back for Bryce Young too. He had been playing much better coming into this game. And number 1 receivers, if you want to qualify him as the number 1 receiver for the Panthers, which clearly the targets would say that he was coming into this game, had just crushed the Cowboys for the better part of the last month. So I think Heath's right. Sometimes just guys don't have great games consecutively 3 weeks in a row. He still has a chance to lead the team in targets. He still has an opportunity to be in your lineup.
Yeah, honestly, they don't have Diggs and they're super beat up, but the Cowboys defense, since they got Parsons back, has been pretty solid, hasn't it? I mean, they had the Bengals at 20 points in the 4th quarter before they muffed that, or they screwed up that punt block. I don't know.
They had 6 sacks today against one of the lesser offenses in the league.
It's pretty incredible that had they beat the Bengals, they'd be 7-7 right now.
Yeah. All right, moving on to Houston and Miami. What a disappointing game. 20-10 the score here.
20-12.
20-12. Yep, you're right. 20-12 the score here. Okay, good with Tyreek Hill next week, and stick with Jonnu, obviously, even if Waddle's, especially if Waddle's out. Like, Dolphins are the Dolphins.
You're starting the 3 main guys, and I think Tua is still a starting quarterback.
Okay. Next week they have the Niners.
I probably won't have two in the top 15.
Yeah, I've seen the 49ers defense now for 2 straight games look mostly good against the pass. I know that Puka Nacua had a big game against them, but Cooper Kupp did not. Their corners have been playing really well. And even with the volume that Tua has, I'm worried about the turnovers, and I'm worried about the pass rush continuing to affect him, especially if that offensive. Look, I think that was an issue today, is that the offensive line was a problem for the Dolphins. There was no Teron Armstead. His backup was Kendall Lamb. He didn't play. They started Jackson Carman at right tackle. I think there are Bengals and Browns fans that are laughing at that. This is just, and then a rookie at left tackle. This isn't a good situation for Tua because that protection, even after his second and a half, man, there was pass rush on him for a good chunk of the game. That makes me nervous about him against the Niners, who might have almost as good of a pass rush as Houston at this point.
Who has more fantasy points per game, Tyreek Hill or Josh Downs?
Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek.
They're tied.
Yikes.
That's a nasty trick.
Well, and so I bet Tyreek has more in the games with Tua.
And by the way,
What does Downs have in the games with Flacco?
Yeah, Downs with Flacco might be the best one of all. That might be the best game log.
Tank Dell, man, like I've said, as soon as Nico got back, the only thing that was keeping him afloat basically was he was getting some end zone targets. Those are all going to Nico now. Tank Dell started in 15% of leagues.
He's too light to float.
That's funny. I hope this isn't what Tank Dell is, though. Like maybe I wonder if we give him a pass when we draft him in like round 8 next year, because he's still got. Hopefully, his speed comes back to him. That's been the thing that's been missing, is just that big, deep downfield speed. We haven't really seen that from him this season. You know what he went through, that broken leg and then everything else off the field. So hopefully he rehabs and he's better than ever next year.
Well, I think this also, we won't get off on this tangent, but I hope this is not what CJ Stroud is, because he's obviously having a bad year. Washington 20, the Saints 19. They went for 2. They went for the win, and they didn't get it. Jamey, sorry, man. Brian Robinson Jr. He got. Yeah, it was okay. It was okay because he had the 3 catches for 22 yards. But what are your thoughts on a somewhat disappointing performance for Brian Robinson Jr.?
He looked slow today. I really was disappointed watching him. You said it. The Saints, run defense has looked better the last 2 weeks. But it was a little frustrating, and I think it was. I don't remember when he had the 3rd catch, but I think I looked in the 4th quarter. I think he had 20 total touches at this point. I said to. I was watching the game with Pete Prisco, Tommy Tran, and I think Jack Capitorto, a few of our colleagues. And I said, if you were to tell me right now, just this number alone, if you were to say 3 catches for 22 yards, I would have said Brian Robinson's having a monster day today.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's kind of been the thing that's been holding back. It's his worst game since Austin Eckler, of the 3 games that Austin Eckler's missed. I still think he's the number 2 running back. I obviously had him ranked way too high. Had he scored a touchdown, Jaden Daniels was a little selfish. There were several red zone opportunities where Jaden Daniels kept the football. He had one opportunity, if you were going to go over goal line chances, he had one opportunity where he did not punch it in. So it was just frustrating to watch. Had he scored a touchdown, it would have been a much better day.
Got to talk about Jack here. Okay, is Jack listening to our show?
Probably not.
Is he playing? He's in the Superflex.
Not even playing. I'm not even in the playoffs in that league. And I noticed Jack picking up all the tight ends. And I was like, that's funny. I wonder who he's playing. The person who's playing didn't even need a tight end. He was just, was it you?
No, he's on a bye.
He's on a bye.
And he picked up, he did the add drop thing. And he did that with 3 different tight ends. This guy, he really, you're going to have a talk with him, Jamey. He really pushes the envelope. This guy.
And is often accusing others of pushing the envelope.
Yeah, Jack, come on, man. Step on,
Jack.
All right. McLaurin with a big game. Daniels, 3 really good games in a row for him. And then we'll check on Kamara. So who's a bigger priority for you, Kendry Miller or Jerome Ford?
Ford. Maybe I'd consider Kendry if we knew that Kamara was for sure done for the year.
Yeah.
All right. Well, even then, it's Green Bay and then Vegas in Week 17. Maybe for that Vegas matchup, you'd want to have Kendry Miller around.
Yeah. I'll give you the hypothetical. They're both out for the year. Who would you rather have, Miller or Ford?
Ford.
I think I'd lean for just because of the matchup in Week 16.
Okay.
I mean, the Saints offense looked better with Spencer Rattler, but that's just a complete disaster of an environment with what the quarterback situation is and the talent around him.
Yeah, just another team playing it out.
I think I'd prefer it to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, though.
I don't know if that's a bad thing for Ford, though. I think it's a bad thing for receivers, but I don't think it's a bad thing for Ford.
Agreed.
They used Dante Foreman a lot, though, in the first 5 games of the season.
They
didn't have that many carries.
They did. I'm not sure.
Well,
Let me see
on
if he's
here.
still even on the roster.
Baltimore 35, Giants 14.
He's still on the roster.
And okay, so what are we thinking about Zay Flowers? He did have 7 targets. That's 6 catches for 53 yards. He has not had a good game in 5 games. I think over 6 weeks. Zay Flowers is frustrating for fantasy managers.
How in the world does Lamar Jackson throw for 290 yards and 5 touchdowns? And Mark Andrews is like, meh. And Zay Flowers is no good. And like, just amazing. I think Zay Flowers is also a number 3 wide receiver, kind of like Adam Thielen, but a higher end variety.
Okay. And then Tyrone Tracy next week gets Atlanta. Feeling good about him?
Flex.
Yeah, I don't feel like that's not a good matchup.
We got to see what happens Monday night.
I think they just don't give up touchdowns. It's not like they're so good against the run, as I recall.
It's true.
Yeah.
But
They're
I don't know
pretty
if
much
Tracy's
average.
going to be in position to score a touchdown if they're going to keep using Singletary in short yardage.
Yeah, but it's weird. I mean, for this crappy team, it's 4 out of 5 games with a touchdown. And didn't he fumble at the goal line against the Bucs? So that would have been 5 out of 5 games with a rushing touchdown if that didn't happen. All right, good
He'd
job.
be an RB1 if he hadn't fumbled.
Just saying, they just say happen to they score like once a game. It's usually a rushing touchdown. Buffalo 48, Detroit 42. Woo! It's the game of the week. Yeah. Okay. Amari
How
Cooper.
awesome was that game?
I don't think he played that much. You know what, though? Honestly, Jamie, it really wasn't that awesome.
No,
Because,
stop it.
Well, no, the Bill for fantasy was great, but the Bills were in control for pretty much the entire game.
There was 1,000 yards of offense.
All right, from a strictly statistical perspective, yeah, but it was really like the Bills got up early and just put their foot on the pedal. And
I know
really
you like a good, 9-6 showdown, but the fun was watching to see if the Lions were going to come back and make this, a competitive game.
The Bills should really be
plays. I mean, it was fun to watch. I don't know what.
The Bills should really be more like the Chiefs. You got to stop winning so convincingly. We need drama.
What do we?
I know
think
you don't want Josh Allen to win the MVP, so it probably was disappointing for you to see all of that.
No, what was really, this is what it is, Jamie. I prefer your starting tight end and wide receiver to be in a 12-6 game and my starting quarterback to be in a 48-42 game. And that's what happened.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
Now you're just rubbing it in. So
Yeah, you took shots.
And again, Josh Allen scores 45 fantasy points and Dalton Kincaid can't get to double digits.
Double digits.
He had an almost touchdown taken away. That was terrible.
Yeah, that's true. And Amari Cooper, he didn't even get a target. He had a route rate of 40%. So he completely went in the opposite direction, but this was a game script that was totally different from what the Bills dealt with last week. Against the Rams last week, they were playing from behind. They were down double digits. So using Amari Cooper, that made a lot more sense. They played with the lead all game long. Amari Cooper did next.
Well, it's also Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid were back, and they weren't there last week.
That might also help explain the lack of just the route participation for Amari Cooper. But
I thought
even
Ty Johnson was
Coleman,
playing his
he had one big catch. Coleman had one big catch on a broken play.
I'm getting a little frustrated by the comments in the chat because what I'm saying is this was an amazing game for fantasy and I enjoyed the heck out of it, but it wasn't that competitive of a game. The Bills controlled it the entire game. Seriously. It's true. I was hoping.
I would hate for that to be the Super Bowl. God, man.
I would hate for this to be the Super Bowl. This was not an exciting game. If you took fantasy out of the equation, it
was
had
not an exciting game.
It was an easy win. It was honestly an easy win. It was an easy win for the Bills. It was a win. They led the entire game. They never looked back.
Oh my God.
I wish they'd do something more impressive.
No, good for them. I'm just saying, like, it wasn't a back and forth neck and neck game. I would want a closer game in the Super Bowl. They scored with hardly any time left.
Which game did you enjoy watching more? The close game on Thursday night or the close game on Sunday?
This game,
that's a great way to
over that one. But let me think if there was a better game that I enjoyed more.
It might be the game of the year.
Oh my God, are you crazy? Like, how about Bengals Ravens? Remember that game? That game
was fantastic.
It was much better than this because you didn't know who was going to win. There was never a point in the second half of this game where it looked like the Lions were going to win this game.
Right. And look at the Bills and Rams game again, referencing that from last week. We were just waiting for Josh Allen he kept coming back, fighting. We thought that they'd be able to come back and win that game against the Rams.
How many games we have left?
Okay, we have 4 left. Denver 31, Indianapolis 13. Any big fantasy takeaways? Let's talk about Heath, the Broncos backfield with McLaughlin injured.
No. I don't want to. Do they have like the world's best matchup so we can wrongly speculate about which guy is going to be best? Because they're facing the Chargers. No,
but look who they play in week 17.
The Bengals. So maybe who's that guy that they haven't played all year?
Blake Watson.
Blake Watson. Maybe it'll be a Blake Watson game in week 17.
How much confidence do you have in Cortland Sutton, who had a quiet game until a late touchdown, and Josh Downs, who was terrible?
I think Cortland Sutton is a start, period. And we talked about this morning, Dave and I, before Jamey got on, I think. But coming into this game, Anthony Richardson was averaging 14 completions per game in his last 3 games. And Michael Pittman was averaging more targets than Josh Downs in the games they played together. It's really hard to be a good starting fantasy wide receiver if you are the second option in a passing game that averages 14 completions per game.
Yeah. Jets-Jaguars is better than Lions.
Much.
Bo Nix was terrible. 3 interceptions, and some of them were just dreadful interceptions.
Yeah.
And he did run a little bit more than he had been in the month prior, but just totally off target. Some of it did have to do with the Colts and their secondary, but most of it was just Bo Nix looking like a bonehead.
Oh, wow. Thomas also says Saints Commanders was better.
Ooh, I don't know. There was a lot of bad football there. Like, it was a fun finish, but
it was close. But it was
no.
close.
See, that's not. I'm not. It's not just it was close, but I would not want that to be. I didn't say it was a bad game. People were like,
Bears Vikings is going to be a much better game.
Bears Vikings.
Could be a much better game.
Could be. All right, here we go. New England, Arizona 30, New England 17. Arizona dominated time of possession here. And Ramondre Stevenson was okay, but is again, bad game script for him. We talked about Marvin Harrison, McBride. We talked about most people. How about Hunter Henry? I'm starting to get Henry's been pretty good. This was a bad game for him, a rare bad game. But the Austin Hooper stuff is starting to bother me. He's like Noah Gray. It's just starting to bother me a little bit.
Yep.
It's here to stay.
Yeah.
Go away.
James Conner, what a finish to the season, right? The last 2 games have been, unless I'm wrong, did he have a bad game last time out? I thought he had a really good game last time out.
Last week against Seattle?
Was last week Minnesota? Or no, I'm missing a game from his game log. Yeah, no, he was really good last time out. Okay.
Yeah, he was good today.
What do you want to talk about? He scored 22 points last week against Seattle. Yeah, that's right. What do you want to talk about from this game, Jamey? Anything from Arizona, New England?
I mean, I think we covered most of the main things. New England is clearly tough to trust. Ramondre Stevenson is tough to trust. Geno Smith is tough to trust. There's you know what you're doing at this point in the playoffs. Marvin Harrison's a number 3 receiver with the chance to still be a number 2 option, depending on what your team looks like. Trey McBride can't find the end zone, but he's a must-start tight end. James Conner's a must-start running back. I still think you go back to Kyler Murray if you need a quarterback this week, unless there's just someone who's extremely obvious on the waiver wire, which it doesn't feel like there's going to be that many guys. Like, I don't know if you want to, at this point, like Jameis Winston, even in the matchup against Cincinnati, comparatively to Kyler Murray in the matchup against the Panthers, where Cooper Rush just lit up the Panthers defense, So
That's right.
For me, I would stick with Kyler simply because if Jameis stinks, he's getting benched, So I don't think he's a slam dunk top 10 quarterback. Like I know I said earlier in this week, he was a must start quarterback for me, taking on the Patriots at home. And that was a disappointment. But he's going to be not far from that. So he'll still be a number 1 quarterback for me in my rankings this week.
All right, let's go to our last two games. Philadelphia 27, Pittsburgh 13, and just horrible day for Najee Harris. 21 total yards on 7 touches, but the Steelers barely had the ball. They had the ball for 20 minutes, and they were trailing.
They didn't have the ball for the last 11 minutes of the game.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. And then Jalen Hurts, terrific showing. Heath, you were the highest on him. I think everybody had him as a top 8 quarterback, maybe top 9. You had him top 5. And they wanted to throw more, and they threw more. And he had the tush-push touchdown. So there's nothing to say about him. But I'm sorry. We're just at the point. I don't want to waste time and talk about players where everybody's going to do the same thing. So, everybody's going to start them regardless. But what do you think about
Who are you starting next week in FFT now that you're advancing?
It's a great question. So I started Goff over Hurts, and it worked out. I'm probably going to go with Hurts next week. Goff has, I think, Chicago.
At Chicago.
And that's the thing. If I don't think he's going to have to throw a ton, and he's outdoors, which he hasn't been really all year, I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts. So in all likelihood, I have a co-manager, so it'll be a group decision. I don't think that 2 huge games in a row from Goff necessarily means a third one's coming. They could easily go back to running the ball like everybody does against Chicago. Run the ball. But what do we think about Najee Harris at Baltimore? Easy sit?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, especially if there's no Pickens. This offense stinks without him on the field.
Oh, we have 2 more games. Tampa Bay 40, Los Angeles 17. Dave, any take? Oh, Bucs running backs. 15 carries for both of them. Jamey, who'd you end up starting, Bucky or Rashad White?
Against you?
Yeah.
Rashad White. I started in Baked Burger, both. Didn't work out. But Bucky looks awesome. Rashad White looked terrible. You got lucky with the touchdown.
True.
I don't know what happened from Rashad White last week to this week, because he looked explosive last week. He looked slow to this week. Bucky Irving, there was seemingly no impact from the back injury. He looked like he was back to his old self. He just didn't have, he didn't have a touchdown. He didn't have a huge role in the passing game. But next week against Dallas, must start guy.
I don't understand how Justin Herbert scores 17 fantasy points with Ladd McConkey against Tampa Bay.
What were how many pass attempts? Because didn't they not have the ball a lot too? They had the ball
33.
Yeah, that's a bad.
It seems like enough.
There's an opportunity for him if you want to trust him. Patrick Surtain got banged up in the game against the Colts. Riley Moss may not play with a knee injury. That's who they get Thursday night. Again.
And they can't run the ball. Chargers cannot run the ball.
Throw out this game because of Anthony Richardson. We saw what happened with Jameson 2 weeks ago. Now,
but we have to throw out Herbert's entire season except for a month.
And you're right, Heath. There's not a significant body of work here. But Dave just said the problem with the Chargers offense. They cannot run the ball right now. And so the way that they should attack the Broncos, especially with McConkey, seemingly coming through this game healthy, is to just throw at them at will. And so if you can protect Herbert in that game, he could have a monster game Thursday night against the Broncos.
Of course, that's been an issue too, is that the offensive line hasn't been as outstanding as Jim Harbaugh wanted it to be when he built it. And I think they lost another interior lineman in the game today.
Mine hurts or something. Oh, no.
That's Denver. I think it's Zion Johnson that got hurt.
Yeah, I was guilty of saying this about Jameis when I was making the case for him. And nobody heard me say it because I wasn't on the show this morning, but I got off of that because Tillman was also out and Njoku and weather. But I said, they can't run the ball. They're going to have to throw. But you know what? I think it's actually bad when a team really can't run the ball. You don't necessarily want them to be able to run so well. But if they can't run the ball at all, that's fewer first downs. That's just think about the best quarterbacks in fantasy. A lot of them have good running games. It's not, moving the ball, staying on the field is a good thing. So being one-dimensional, I think, is actually bad.
Their offense has been terrible since Dobbins got hurt. Absolutely terrible.
Oh, wait. No, that was our last game. We already talked about the Buffalo game. That's right. Yeah.
I think for the Bucs, we got to start giving Jalen McMillan some attention.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing what we hoped he would do.
I'm done with Cade Otton. Starting to run out of tight ends, though. I'm done with Ferguson. Done with Otton.
Well, we got Strange. You got Smart. Yeah. There's some other ones that'll be out there.
Smart could have had such a huge game. Herbert missed him on 2 throws. One over his head. One I think he threw just a little bit wide of him. But, You have two guys now that you can pivot to.
Yeah, that's right. Gamer Eric with the My Cousin Vinny quote, except it's not I'm done with this guy. It's I'm finished with this guy. And I'm finished with this show. The one last thing about Herbert, I'm not sure if you guys saw it, but he got sacked at one point. He got up really slow. So we know he's playing through a foot injury right now, ankle, whatever it is. Just can't really move that well, I think. So
In a short week. I do think, though, it's worth looking at if both Surtain and Moss are out. No guarantee for either one. They both could play. But
I agree.
There's a big opportunity here for Herbert to help you.
Surtain did not leave with his injury. He got hurt. He came back in.
Then he got hurt again.
But then he left again. But I think he left again because it was late in the fourth quarter. He got hurt again. I thought he left to score. All right. We'll keep an eye on it. It's a big one. That's it for the show. Thanks so much for watching and listening, everybody. We will talk to you tomorrow with Beyond the Box Score. All right. Have a good one. See ya.